When my husband said he'd be gone for the weekend and his best friend would keep me company, I laughed. It sounded ridiculous, like something from a bad soap opera. But Daniel wasn't joking. He had already packed his bags, already made the call, already arranged for Ethan to arrive before he left. I remember the way Daniel kissed my forehead instead of my lips. The way he said, "You'll be fine," without really looking at me. It wasn't affection, it was dismissal disguised as care. That small, quiet moment was when I first felt the ground shift beneath us. Daniel and I had been married for 4 years. 4 increasingly silent years. In the beginning, he was all warmth, the kind of man who remembered how I took my coffee and left notes on the mirror. But lately, he'd become a stranger in our own home, living in the same rooms but never really with me. His smiles felt mechanical, his eyes elsewhere. I had blamed work, stress, even myself. Never him. Ethan arrived that afternoon, right on schedule. I'd met him only a handful of times before, always in Daniel's presence. He was polite, soft-spoken, the kind of man who stayed in the background but noticed everything. When he stepped through the doorway, the air changed. Not in a dangerous way, just noticeable. His presence filled the silence Daniel had left behind. He carried a bottle of wine and a casual smile. "House-sitting duty," he said lightly, holding up the bottle like a peace offering. I forced a smile in return, unsure whether to laugh or lock the door. We settled into an awkward rhythm that evening. He asked about my work, my hobbies, my plans. Things Daniel hadn't asked in months. I told him about my small business, my recent promotion, how I'd been meaning to repaint the living room but couldn't decide on a color. He listened, genuinely listened, and somehow that felt both comforting and wrong. At dinner, the conversation turned to Daniel. Ethan spoke of him like a brother, confident, loyal, maybe a little careless. I tried to match his warmth, but a quiet bitterness crept into my voice. "He's been distant lately," I admitted. Ethan nodded but didn't comment, his eyes flickering with something unreadable. After he left for the guest room, I sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The clock ticked too loudly. I replayed Daniel's parting words again and again. "You'll be fine. Why send his best friend to watch over me? What kind of husband does that?" I stared at the untouched wine, wondering if it was meant to ease my loneliness or distract me from it. When I finally turned off the lights and went upstairs, a strange thought clung to me, soft and unwelcome. Maybe Daniel didn't trust me. Or worse, maybe he didn't trust him. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which possibility frightened me more. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, turning the quiet kitchen golden. Ethan was already there, sleeves rolled up, frying eggs like he belonged. The scent of butter and coffee filled the air, small comforts I hadn't realized I missed until that moment. "Hope you don't mind," he said with a smile that met his eyes. "Figured you shouldn't have to cook while you've got company." It was the kind of thoughtfulness Daniel used to show. For a heartbeat, I felt something loosen in my chest, gratitude, maybe, or the ache of remembering what it felt like to be seen. We ate together, the clink of cutlery marking the rhythm of our unspoken thoughts. He asked gentle questions, about my job, my favorite music, the first place I'd ever traveled. Nothing personal enough to cross a line, but enough to make the silence between us feel alive. By noon, the awkwardness had faded. We fixed the broken cabinet Daniel had promised to repair months ago. Ethan handled the tools while I held the flashlight, our arms brushing occasionally, just skin, just warmth, but it startled me every time. Each accidental touch left a small spark in its wake, one that lingered longer than it should have. When the cabinet door finally closed properly, I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep. "Guess it just needed a patient hand," I said. Ethan glanced at me. "Sometimes that's all anything needs." The words hung there, heavier than they should have been. I stepped back, pretending to tidy the tools, pretending my pulse wasn't betraying me. In the afternoon, it rained. Heavy drops drummed against the windows, blurring the garden into watercolor shapes. We sat on the couch, wrapped in the quiet sound of the storm. I told him how much I hated thunder as a child, how my father used to count between lightning flashes to calm me. Ethan listened, smiling softly. "Then let's count," he said, And for a few minutes, we did. One flash, one heartbeat at a time. It should have been harmless. But it wasn't. When Daniel's message buzzed on my phone, "Hope you're okay," the illusion shattered. 3 short words, cold and distant. I typed, "I'm fine," and deleted it before sending. What was the point? Ethan must have seen something shift in my face because he said quietly, "You don't have to pretend everything's okay." "I'm not pretending," I lied. He gave a slow, understanding nod, the kind that feels like forgiveness. We sat in silence again, the air heavy with what neither of us dared to name. By nightfall, the storm had knocked the power out. The house went dark, save for the glow of a candle on the table. Ethan brought it over, setting it between us like a fragile truth. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then his hand found mine, steady, warm, certain. And this time, I didn't pull away. Morning came sharp and merciless. The storm had passed, leaving behind a grey stillness that felt heavier than the night itself. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Ethan moving in the kitchen. My pulse stumbled as memories from a few hours earlier clawed their way back, the warmth of his hand, the way I hadn't let go. When I stepped downstairs, he didn't look at me. His shoulders were tense, his movements too precise. "Coffee's ready," he said, voice neutral, almost rehearsed. I wanted to ask what last night meant, but the words caught in my throat. Maybe he felt the same, regret tangled with something neither of us could name. I sat at the table, staring at the black surface of my cup. The silence between us wasn't peaceful anymore. It was loaded. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel's name. For a heartbeat, I felt a surge of relief. Maybe he missed me. Maybe he was coming home early. But when I opened the message, the world tilted. Greater than, "Hope you and Ethan enjoyed the test." The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. My hands went cold. "Ethan," I whispered, "what is this?" He froze. His jaw tightened, and something inside me knew, he already understood. "Lena, please," he said quietly, "I didn't want it to go this far." "What do you mean, this far?" My voice shook. "Did you know about this?" He ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet my eyes. "Daniel asked me to look after you. He said he was worried you were lonely. That he wanted to see if you'd." He stopped, the rest of the sentence dying on his tongue. "If I'd cheat," I finished for him, my voice sharp as glass. He didn't deny it. The room blurred. My chest felt tight, every heartbeat echoing like a blow. Daniel had set me up. He hadn't trusted me, he'd tested me. The friend he sent wasn't protection. He was bait. I stood, gripping the table's edge to keep my hands from trembling. "So what am I to you?" I asked Ethan. "A favor, a game." His eyes were full of regret. "I swear, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I thought he was just being paranoid. I didn't think he'd watch." I spat. Record. The bile rose in my throat. I didn't want to know the answer. He took a hesitant step toward me, but I recoiled. The trust, the quiet comfort, the laughter, all of it turned to ash. "You both broke something you can't fix," I said, voice low but steady. The weight of it pressed down on me, not just betrayal, but humiliation. My marriage had become a test I hadn't agreed to take. When I finally spoke again, it was almost a whisper. "If love needs proof, it isn't love. It's control." And with that, I turned away. The door closed behind me, but this time, it wasn't the sound of leaving. It was the sound of ending. The road stretched endlessly ahead, gray ribbon under a pale morning sky. I didn't look back. Behind me were the ashes of a marriage that had died long before I'd realized it. The silence in the car was sharp but clean, no accusations, no tests, no lies. Just me, and the hum of freedom. Every mile put distance between who I was and who I was becoming. The woman Daniel married had been patient, forgiving, always ready to explain his moods away. The woman gripping the steering wheel now had nothing left to explain. My tears had dried into resolve. My hands were steady. For the first time in years, so was my heartbeat. I found a small motel off the highway and checked in without caring where I'd end up next. The mirror above the sink showed a face I barely recognized, tired eyes, messy hair, and a strange calm. Guilt lingered somewhere deep, but it was fading, replaced by something sturdier, understanding. Love, I realized, shouldn't feel like a test you're destined to fail. It shouldn't be measured in traps or boundaries or silent punishments. What Daniel called loyalty was really fear, the kind that destroys what it claims to protect. Days turned into weeks. I found a small apartment in the city, started freelancing again, and filled my days with quiet routines, morning walks, coffee shops, the sound of rain against clean windows. Each simple moment became a small victory. I didn't need anyone watching over me anymore. Sometimes I caught myself remembering Ethan's face, the guilt in his eyes. I didn't hate him. Maybe that was the strangest part. He had been a mirror, showing me the cracks I'd ignored. Daniel's betrayal had only exposed what I'd refused to see, that I had been living inside someone else's idea of love. One evening, a message appeared on my phone. Daniel. His tone was softer now, almost pleading. Greater than, can we talk? I miss you. I just wanted to be sure you were loyal. I see now I went too far. I stared at the screen for a long time. The woman who once would have written back with forgiveness no longer existed. I typed 3 words, "You were wrong," then deleted them. He didn't deserve even that much. I blocked his number, set the phone down, and opened the window. The city lights flickered like stars, and for the first time, I felt weightless. What Daniel had called a test had become something else entirely, my awakening. He tested my loyalty. I tested my freedom. Only one of us passed. I smiled, a small, quiet thing. Tomorrow I'd repaint my walls, maybe something light, something alive. I didn't know where life would take me next, but for once, it would be my choice. And that, I thought, was the truest form of love I'd ever known, the one you give to yourself.